Okay, so in light of obviously the George Floyd killing and all the protesting, and we've had quite a few days now since all of that has gone on, we got quite a few people out here um, screaming about defund the police. And you have people on the left and people on the right who are using this to their advantage, and they're both getting it wrong. And the answer is more nuanced than either side would lead you to believe. So what the left is getting wrong here is the framing issue on this subject. In general, the right is far better at framing these discussions in these public debates. The left is awful at it. They're awful. We shouldn't be saying defund the police. That's not... language matters. It plays a crucial role. And for instance, let's take you take taxes. So you have quite a few people on the right, and particularly the libertarian right. They'll say things like taxes are theft, and that makes taxes seem criminal. It makes them seem like they should be outlawed. It's also complete nonsense, right? Because if you talk about taxes in a different way, you can say that taxes are used so that you have paved roads that you can then utilize to get to and from work, or get to and from school, or go pick up groceries. You have property taxes, which are used to fund the schools in your city, which then in turn employ teachers that hopefully teach your kids well. The list goes on and on. Taxes are a necessity, and they are used for the betterment of society. So how you frame and use the language matters. Another one is pensions, right? A pension is a delayed payment for work already done. It's a stipulation for taking a job. It's part of your earned salary that is invested by your employer. And you then have people on the right who will try to have companies get away from offering pensions. That's why pensions across the board being offered by companies, big corporations, are down from decades in the past. But you already earned your pension. It's delayed payment for work you've already done. You are entitled to it. That is the definition of entitled. So language matters tremendously here, and we can't say things like defund the police because, one, it doesn't sound good. It sounds like if there's less funds for the police, they won't be able to do their job adequately. Second, the right will scream this like all their catchy slogans, like drain the swamp and build the wall, neither of which happen, both of which are catchy and are easily touted and screamed, and they stick. And the same will happen with defund the police. So what do we really need to do then? Well, we need, instead of saying defund the police, we need to demilitarize the police, and we need to allocate those funds in a different direction. So, for instance, there should be better training. Police shouldn't be being trained to be warriors. They should be being trained to be guardians of the people that they serve and protect in their communities. We can reallocate their budget. For instance, Oakland spends 41% of their general budget on police. Minneapolis spends 36% and Houston spends 35%. In 80 cities across the country, fines and forfeitures account for more than 50% of the general fund revenue for those cities. So you have like housing code violations and traffic tickets and whatnot. So what we can do is reallocate those funds in different areas, like get better training for police officers, like I said, to be more like guardians and less like warriors. Train officers in more hand-to-hand tactics where they're less inclined to use chokeholds or keep their knee pressed upon someone's neck. You have training them psychologically on how to de-escalate a situation and talk to people, and how not to escalate it, and how not to get in people's face, and how to remain cool. There's a myriad of ways where we can reallocate these funds, and they can be better put to use, not just defunding the police as a whole, which could reduce the amount of funds that they have to better train them to be better at policing. And I guess in a sense it could mean you defund them, because if you demilitarize the police in a way, they may not they wouldn't have a lot of the equipment that they have, a lot of the military grade equipment, so perhaps they need less funds because they're not purchasing that equipment. During these riots and protests, the cops were outfitted like they were Iron Man. And I find it pretty funny that the cops are outfitted in these ways, and they have Humvees and, military grade vehicles that are on the streets of America, but we can't get proper N95 masks to all healthcare workers during a pandemic. That seems like a complete societal breakdown. Something's not right here. And it even went as far as it seems like the city council in Minneapolis voted to where it can't be vetoed by the mayor, to where they're going to disband the police force in Minneapolis. Now, again, this will be seized on by the right by saying, like, look, there's going to be no police. It's going to be lawlessness in Minneapolis. That's not how it works. Now, not really sure where I stand on this issue, but it has worked before. Camden, New Jersey disbanded the police in 2012, replaced it with a force that encompassed all of Camden County. It seemed to work pretty well. They rehired many of the same officers, but a lot of their protocols and training were completely upended and changed. Compton, California did the same thing in 2000, shifting its police to LA County. Again, many of the same officers were, rehired, retrained, protocol changed. It doesn't seem to have worked as well as it did in Camden, New Jersey. But again, it doesn't mean that there's no cops policing the city and, it's lawlessness and it's like, Batman and Bane is out there letting the criminals out of the prison. That's not how it goes. And, depending on how it's carried out, it could work well. It may not work well. But when you just throw out these, blanket terms like disbanding or defunding, it doesn't sound great. Language matters, again. And, you let the right seize on the words, and they use them in their campaign slogans, and they use them to their advantage. And it generally doesn't work out well. So for those of us who are on the left, we have to learn that language and framing matters. It matters tremendously. And I understand that for a lot of the policies for people on the left, it takes a little more discussion, it takes a little more nuance, a little more understanding to get your point across. A lot of the information and slogans on the right, like I said, like build the wall and drain the swamp, are very straightforward. Doesn't take much thinking. They're catchy. You don't have to go through the nuance and the minutia of the policy or situation. It's easy. It's easy for people to get behind those things. But we got to make sure that they're not, something like defund the police isn't seized on by the right, used to their advantage and against the detriment to the communities that really do need police reform in this country.
you.